Hello and welcome everybody, I'm Proper Variant. This is number 18 of the Dev Diaries for Crusader Kings III. Today we're going to talk about men-at-arms, mercenaries, and Casus Belli. So we're talking about war again, and that was a topic already, I think, in like Dev Diary number 3. I'm very excited to return to war, because even after reading this Dev Diary, after reading all of the other Dev Diaries, I think that war is just a 100% advanced version in CK3 compared to CK2. I don't think they made any mistakes so far that I was able to spot in CK3 when it comes to how war works, but you know, be it how you command your army, be it the mercenaries, or be it the Casus Belli. I think they do everything way better than compared to CK2, so I'm very excited for this Dev Diary. With the last one, of course, there was some uncertainty in it. I'm still not very happy. I'm still quite bummed about the fact that there will be no imperial government for the Byzantines in CK3 at launch, but it is what it is. At the end of the day, I do think it is very difficult to design a game from the ground up where you improve on every system, and so far, you know, religion, war, and vassal management, all of those stuff are absolute improvements, so I understand that some of the other features have to be left behind. It does still bum me out, but that aside, let's jump into war, because this one is super cool to me. It will open up war and warfare and having fun with war to so many more people in CK3. Now, what I want to say before we jump into this, we just had a multiplayer game in the Discord server. I actually streamed it as well, and there was a person, Terra. He had an amazing commander, he had an amazing army, and he went and beat up other players' armies that were double the size. I think there was like 2.5 times the size as well. Now, how did he do it? Most of the time when you watch somebody play Crusader Kings, when you watch me play Crusader Kings, when you play Crusader Kings yourself, you will say, I just need to have the bigger army and I will win. Now, there are, of course, you know, you have terrain, you have regions, you have rivers, you have that sort of stuff, you have different unit types, you have different commander skills, but most people are not fully aware of them and how good they actually are, because it isn't really explained in the UI. So before we jump into anything else, I want to take a look at this UI, and this isn't quite it yet, because this is, of course, you know, more the CB side than the actual warfare side, but I love this UI. This is such a huge improvement over the UI that we have in CK2, and let me just remind you what we actually have in CK2. If I wanted to declare war as the Holy Roman Emperor Kaiser Heinrich IV, for example, against France, I would have to, you know, declare war in his character menu, and then we get this tiny window. I can get more information on what is going on by hovering over it, but that is also it. You just see a very poorly visualized text, and for the record, I just want to say, when I say poorly visualized, I think it was great for its time, but no longer is great. You see a poorly visualized text that people have to work their way through. There's not, you know, really many highlights. You see the red and the green numbers, but all the yellow stuff is all the same. There's not a big difference there that points out, hey, this is the important information that you really need. But they changed that to a degree where I'm incredibly happy with it, because I think this is much easier to tell what you're doing, where you're doing it, and why you're doing it, whether you are a new or an old player. So, for example, what we have right here is the Holy Roman Emperor trying to, and let me actually check this out. I just want to check this out. Boleslav II the Bold. This is literally him, although he is not excommunicated here. But we are thinking about declaring war against him. This is the Holy Roman Emperor. That's us, and this is Poland. You can see neither side has allies. I assume those would be marked on the map as well if you are on this menu, but that aside. And we can declare two type of wars. So every single war in CK2, in CK3, similar to CK2, will still work with Casus Belli. In, for example, EU4, that is not the case. In EU4, you can just declare a war and then take anything that fits into your war score. In CK3, they stick to the CK2 formula, which I believe to be very good. You declare war for a reason and you win whatever the reason was if you were to win. Now you can see here, this is its own gigantic window. And I'm a huge fan of this. I think, first of all, I like the scroll look, that this has, but second of all, I'm a huge fan of this becoming its own window. Declaring wars is so important in CK3 and in CK2, and yet you just get this tiny tooltip. That's not right. So what we have here is, let's just say, you know, seize the county of Görlitz. That is a de jure county of the Holy Roman Emperor, so we have a right to it. And I think this is just the symbol of Görlitz, although I don't actually know. Is that the symbol of Görlitz? Let me check. Yeah, this doesn't look... Yeah, I was about to say, I don't know what this symbol is all about. Maybe that is the new symbol of Görlitz, even though it would confuse me. But that aside, you can very clearly, and especially prominently listed, see that, you know, if you enforce your demands, this is what happens. If you, white piece, if you were to click here, you would see what happens right here. If you were to surrender in this war, just so you know of the risks, so that you are aware, this is what would happen. This is incredibly prominent. It is incredibly highlighted and makes it very easy to see what is going on. And on top of that, I assume, because this definitely looks like it, once you open this window and click on a Casus Bellus, Bellus? Is that the singular? Either way, you will see whatever your target is as your goal. You will see it marked like this. You see this? It's it has some stripes over it. I really like that. It is so super easy to, you know, overlook certain things, to possibly, you know, if you're not fully paying attention, to declare the war against something else, accidentally, you know, declare a wrong war, so to speak. You can see the enemies, and I assume if we had allies, or if they had allies, we would also see them on the map as well. And you can see yourself. This is absolutely excellent visualization. This is how UI design should work, and they clearly, and this is why I'm so excited for War, because, you know, even if there are some topics in CK3 where I look at them and say, I wish this were a bit different, for example, inheritance, if I look at this UI, or when I look at this UI, I see excellence, because this is actually exactly what I wanted from CK2 all this time, and that they never did it. You know, sometimes you look at an invasion and you're like, is this an invasion where I can only take the parts in the same kingdom? Or is this an invasion where I can take everything where I siege down the top holding? Sometimes I make the mistake, sometimes I'm not sure, and I imagine many other people feel the same way. I am incredibly thankful, incredibly excited for these UI changes. This is absolutely huge. Now, with that being said, let's move on to the dev diary here. War declaration costs, as we said, you know, we talked about this is all about CBs, and you can see it right here. If I were to declare war, can I even declare war? Yes. If I were to declare war against Poland, you could see the cost right here when we declare war: 600 piety, 995 gold. You can also see what happens with the opinion. You can see what happens if we win, and so on and so forth, if you work your way through the tooltip. Now, costs of war already is a concept that exists in CK2. You can see right here, sometimes there is no cost attached to it. Right here, for example, there is literally no cost. Whatever we do, as long as we win, we lose nothing ever, except, I guess, Poland loses 15 opinion for 15 years, made me a tributary state, but honestly, who cares about that? So what I'm talking about is cost of CBs is already an existing concept, but this is now changed. And by the way, I do want to point out one more thing that I also suspected, but now I can confirm it. This corner right here indicates the level of title that this title is. So this is golden, which is the king. I assume, I'm actually certain. Silver is a duke, bronze is a count, and then the rest I'm not entirely certain where Empire and, you know, that sort of stuff would fall. But either way, we already are familiar with the concept of costs for wars. Now, they changed this a bit, and I think they changed it for the better, but let's take a look. You can declare war without paying its cost, at which point you'll instead pay something bigger, such as a level of fame or devotion. So, for example, you have a cost if you declare, you know, a religious war, then you will have to pay piety. If you declare a war against your own religion like this one, then you would pay prestige, much like you can see it right here. Prestige, I just want to recall this, prestige has a second thing that is called fame. Prestige, you spend, fame, you accumulate, and the more you have, the more famous you are, obviously. And then you have piety and devotion. Piety you spend on things, and devotion you just accumulate, and you become a more devout Christian in the eyes of others. So that is primarily about that. If you don't want to pay whatever, you know, the costs were in prestige or piety, so in your expendable units, you could pay it in fame or devotion. This is entirely new. This opens up either just expending something so that people don't think less of you for declaring war. If I spend this prestige, people don't think less of me, because at the same time my fame stays the same, right? But if I said I want to use that prestige for something else, I'm just going to expend some fame, you can make people think less of you, because you're essentially saying, this is my land, screw you, Poland. And they're like, wait a minute, you're a dick. And if you do that, they will think slightly less of you. But you keep the prestige. This introduces another war economy that previously didn't exist like this. Everything went via piety and prestige. And I do want to point out, by the way, piety and prestige in CK2, and there's a lot of people that don't want to hear this, but piety and prestige in CK2 are mana. And there's nothing wrong with them. There is nothing wrong with them being mana. I just want to point that out. They are good mana. You can immediately know why your character is prestigious. You can immediately know why your character is pious. They make a lot of sense, but they are mana. Nobody in real life has a quantified form of their prestige lying around in their backyard telling them you can spend 100, but of course we do have 100 gold lying around in the background that I dug down and buried in a hole ages ago. But with that being said, this new choice between either spending, you know, the currency that is common for spending on these things, or spending the currency that you usually just want to accumulate, is a big change. I think this really opens up an avenue that previously didn't exist at all. Levels of fame devotion brings their own benefits, so ideally you want to avoid this, but it's not as big as a problem as, say, truce breaking. Truce breaking, of course, we don't actually know the stats of what it does, but again, the change here for me personally is that if I don't have the prestige to declare this war in CK2, I simply cannot declare it. If I don't have the prestige in CK3, I can still declare the war if I am okay with people thinking less of me. I think this is a huge change. I'm very positive towards it. So, this is all about CBs. The UI, again, I'm a huge fan, an insane fan. And when it comes to the usability of prestige or piety and of course level fame or devotion, I'm a big fan as well. I think this introduces a new economy that I would be very interested in. At the end of the day, if you expend fame or devotion, you lose opinion with other characters, so this is essentially just people liking you less, which is a good thing to be able to spend on, you know? If I do something that is a dick move, people would be like, I'm, you know, -5 opinion with you, one proud Bavarian. So I think this is something that is indeed a realistic usage case of mana. Now let's move on to men-at-arms. Men-at-arms are amazing. I talked to someone just very recently, and they said, I don't like men-at-arms because they're not permanently raised. I want them permanently raised like my retinue so that I can walk into enemy territory and conquer things immediately before doing anything else. And my point is here, that is obviously just simply not working as designed, which is why they redesigned men-at-arms to a thing where it is not a standing army. First of all, of course, historically speaking, standing armies were definitely not a case in the medieval times. But second of all, or, well, they weren't a case in most cases. You know, it's like, I gotta put that footnote on there. But what existed, of course, were special and good units. So, for example, men-at-arms. And the way they work here, I'm very excited for because they are less exploitable, but give you equally the amount of, or rather the degree of customization ability. So, men-at-arms, on the other hand, are more specialist troops and the component that gives you more control over precisely how you win your wars. This interface is very interesting to me. So what you can see here is we could raise all armies, we could disband them all, and then we can see here our armies, which includes our normal levy, you know, 6k, that's pretty good. 6k is a pretty decent amount of levy, I would argue. We have 7 knights, those are actual characters, actual people that we could manage and, for example, change, you know, who it is, that sort of stuff. Then we have Mercenaries and Holy Orders, but let's take a look at that later. And down here we have men-at-arms. They work, when it comes to the idea of them, I think fairly similar to Retinues, where you have these different regiments that you can recruit, except they work slightly differently. We don't get this arbitrary number, you know, that is our retinue cap usage. Instead, we just get, hey, you just can hire 7 men-at-arms. For example, these are knights, or, well, huscarls. These are onagers, so this is catapults essentially, and these are archers. And we can determine that we want those in particular, and we can even strengthen these particular men-at-arms regiments, you know, if we wanted to. So instead of hiring a new men-at-arms regiment, I could simply make this one larger. You know, I can double their size, making it so that they are obviously more expensive, but also will show up more numerously in an actual case of war. What these individually do, that is something that we're going to take a look at in a second, so I'm not going to explain that yet, but this interface is nice. It, you know, lets us know, hey, this is 3 out of 7, it's not like 9,432 retinue cap, my friend. This is simply put, you know, you have a very limited amount of army, or a limited amount of space in which you can specialize your army. What do you want to do? So, let's take a look at these specializations. You have a maximum of men-at-arms regiment slots for your army, and in addition, they have an upkeep cost. It's smaller when they're unraised, but the moment you have them stand up to go to war, they'll demand a lot more pay. Obviously, you know, they are capped on, well, retainer, and if you need to go to war, then you can actually have to, or you will have to pay them for the actual usage case. Even though you can max out your men-at-arms slots, there are other ways you can expand your army. Each men-at-arms regiment can be increased a set number of times. So, again, I have a choice here. I could upgrade this, but this wouldn't take an additional men-at-arms slot. It would just make them more and more expensive. But I only actually need to create more regiments if I want to have different types in my army. So, for example, if I am fighting as the Byzantine Empire, I will be fighting in, for example, the Balkans, very mountainous territories, but also maybe, you know, if I'm good enough, in southern Italy, where it is mostly plains, farmlands, and so on and so forth. So for both of those regions, I need to have men-at-arms that would prepare me for this. So, you know, sometimes maybe I would like anyone that could really deal with mountainous terrain. Other times I would need other people. So whenever I'm very active in the Balkans, I will probably recruit, let's say, you know, what do we have here? Maybe more archers. I don't actually know which ones will be good. This looks like we don't want camel riders for this. I assume that maybe light cavalry, for example, would be better in the Balkans. You know, some heavy cavalry may be better in southern Italy. And then you can decide whether you want to just upgrade a men-at-arms or whether you want to create a new regiment. So I'm a huge fan of this. This gives you a lot of customizability, where you are active, what you're doing, you know, what your empire is doing, where your current character is active. I think all of those are very interesting. And they let you determine how you truly want your army set up beyond these meaningless levies that you just throw into the fight. They're just peasants anyway, who cares? Each men-at-arms regiment can be increased a set number of times to field even more of your deadly warriors. This will naturally increase their maintenance costs as well, both raised and unraised, so think twice before hiring twice as many soldiers. You can see here, so this is the option if I just upgraded, for example, the heavy infantry here, then they would cost more, they would also be more. Easy peasy, we understand the logic here, I think, very easy to explain. And this is the screen if I click the button, create a men-at-arms regiment. You can see here we have a choice between different units: skirmishers, bowmen, light cavalry, pikemen, heavy infantry, onagers, and heavy cavalry. We you know, in particular, I think, see some very basic units that we already know from CK2. Very nice. They kept all of those around, all of the important ones. And you can see these stats right here. So it is very good UI design yet again. I really, honestly, I'm such a huge fan because CK2 has such an intricate battle and warfare system, but nobody knows about it because nobody actually bothers looking up all the stats. And I get it. Listen, I get it. Nobody like adds all the stats of your, you know, commander abilities together. Nobody really does it. Everybody just looks, hey, my stack is bigger, I'm gonna go in. Now this changes in CK3, again, because of the UI. Absolutely amazing. Heavy infantry counters these types: pikemen, terrain effects, no terrain effects. It explains everything in one small window. Huge fan. Full maintenance, unraised maintenance. You can see the unraised maintenance is actually a tiny fraction, not even 1/4 of the full maintenance. So I think we want to consider, or actually, I'm an idiot. No, not even 1/3 of the full maintenance. Good math right there, good math. So this is pretty decent. You don't want to raise them at all if you don't have to, because this would, you know, bring a pretty heavy toll to your country. And once you hire them, you will have to pay an what's it called? A one-time cost, that's the word. And then you have hired the men-at-arms regiment. So very transparent, much more transparent than Retinues. Very easy to understand why you're hiring certain units in certain circumstances, and very easy to understand in which circumstances you want to specialize your army in whatever. For example, if I am facing, as the Byzantine Empire, if I am facing the Turkic invaders, you know, the Seljuks, for example, I will have to be prepared for a lot of horses. Meaning I will probably go for some pikemen, or maybe even some heavy cavalry. I assume that they have a bonus in some sort of way. Unless there are, of course, horse archers coming. So, this specialization gives you more power over war without having to crunch any numbers, because all the numbers are presented to you in a very neat way. Men-at-arms also include siege engines, which is one of the easiest way of speeding up your land grabs. However, siege weapons are almost useless in regular combat, and taking them uses up one of your men-at-arms slots, so it's a decision that has to be carefully thought through. You can see right here the onagers are exactly that. They're catapults, you know, they fire and they speed up your fort siege down progress. These small torsion catapults can tear down enemy walls by hurling stone projectiles over a distance. Pretty decent. I think there's always a point where you want to upgrade this, unless you fight tribes, you know, unless you fight, for example, nomads. In that case, you don't ever really need siege engines because you're not sieging down anything. But I think in most cases, onagers will probably be a part of the player's men-at-arms. So down here, they also explain that we yet again get cultural retinues, well, men-at-arms, but you know, they are just the new conclusion of retinues, and you can see that right here on the bottom of the retinue list. Wherever you play, you can see whatever the cultural retinue is. For the Germans, it is the knight. For the English, for example, let's just jump into this fella. It is the housecarl. Oh, that's the Anglo-Saxons. The English, I believe, get the longbows. What do we have over here? Also knights? Yeah. What about you, Berbers? You get the Berber cavalry. So you can see cultural retinues was already a thing. They've just expanded on that. They made it more important. You know, when you have a certain culture, that you can recruit a certain type of people. I assume, and I'm actually not certain yet, I don't think they say it. I assume that the camel riders, you know, again, we essentially have it right over here, if I'm not mistaken. Andalusians. Wait a minute. No, that's not right. I need a... Maybe an Egyptian? Yeah, there you go. Camel cavalry. Maybe we're looking at an Egyptian culture character. I'm not entirely sure. But cultural men-at-arms are making a comeback. I'm a huge, huge fan of that. Culturally relevant units really change up how warfare works. You know, whenever you fight the French, you will fight them differently than compared to the Polish, for example. And again, this is a superb interface. This is very, very good. You can see exactly what is going on, where they fight well, where they don't fight well. Don't send them into mountains, but definitely do send them into plains and desert. Absolutely excellent. I love the way they designed this UI. Seriously, I can't point it out enough. When I look at this, for example, and this is fine, okay? If you want to spend the time, then you can certainly do that. Look at this. Give me, I think I need money. Cash. Where can I recruit you? Cannot afford... Oh, Oh, right, I understand. Give me one moment here. Debug mode, play 3096, cache. There we go. If I recruit these, right, it will tell me their actual stats right here, so I can take a look at you, and then I will, for example, see that Camel Cavalry attack plus 41.1%, and that is because of Camel Warrior and Cairo Technology, and then, of course, you also have Camel Warrior and Cairo Technology right there, and you can tell how, you know, certain units perform if you look in this screen, and it's so far hidden away, my god! Here you can see, you know, mountains impact certain units in a certain way, plains don't impact anyone, desert don't directly impact anyone, but what I'm talking about is that essentially getting the information of how units will actually perform in a certain war is so much more hidden in CK2 than it is in CK3. I am actually amazed by the huge steps that we are seeing here. I mean, to be fair, CK2 is 2012, this one is 2020. The huge steps in UI work that we're seeing here, I'm a huge fan. They will make war, especially multiplayer wars, for example, much more interesting because players will have a much easier time to actually get into, you know, designing their armies and making their armies interested, or rather excellent at fighting the specific opponents at whatever time they're fighting at. Now, let's talk about Mercenaries. That was enough about Men-at-Arms. Very cool system. This is, in my opinion, you know, the direct expansion on the topic of Retinues. I think they're making everything, or they're doing everything the right way here. They're upgrading Retinues to a much more important unit of the army because this is the only way to specialize your army, and they are making it so that you can't exploit it by leading them to the border and, you know, leading them into enemy territory before you start the war. And I think that is an excellent choice, both for gameplay reasons as well as, of course, historical reasons. So, big fan of this. Now, let's move on to Mercenaries. Mercenaries are very, very cool in CK3. And I say this without, of course, having ever played the game. But let's jump into this. And this is fairly short, but it will be juicy. First of all, you no longer pay monthly maintenance for Mercenaries. Instead, you pay their cost for 3 years up front, and then they're yours for that time to use as you see fit. 3 years can be very long or very short, depending on what kind of wars you're fighting. They're still with you through thick and thin, almost, although mostly the thick of battle. So the way Mercenaries work now, and this actually is very exciting to me, the way Mercenaries work for now, you recruit them, you pay for them, and then you don't have to pay them for 3 more years, meaning that your characters will likely have a war phase and then a peace phase, meaning instead of just, you know, hey, let me just, like, get these mercenaries and then maybe get more mercenaries, maybe change this up, change this there, you know, like, changing it up all the time, or not changing it up at all, you know, like hiring mercenaries and then just having them raised permanently and going to war for a permanent amount of time. I think this is a good balance here where we will see a difference. You know, after 3 years you will say, I can't afford paying these mercenaries anymore, so I will stop having war for, you know, the next 3 years to go. So, this is a pretty cool change. It also makes it so that you're not going to randomly run out of money, be it via event, be it because the AI mismanages, be it so many reasons. None of this will happen anymore. The mercenaries are paid for, you don't need to worry about it, but I will say I am definitely hoping that we will be seeing some sort of, you know, let's call it like a mercenaries trying to get their spoils of war by plundering, for example, event, that sort of stuff. There is an event like that in CK2, but it is very annoying and not really helpful. Let's hope that CK3 does it better. Now, let's take a look at the Border Reavers band. The Border Reavers band is a Danish band. They are based in Ringkøbing, I think, and they are made up of 2,484 soldiers. They have 4 knights, so they have their own important characters. They have 1,418 levies, then some huscarls, some light cavalry, and some skirmishers, meaning if you are fighting someone, you know, that is, for example, running around in very light troops and mostly archers, then the light cavalry can take care of the archers and the huscarls can take care of the light infantry. And then down here we see the mercenary captain, Captain Morgans of Border Reavers band. You can see his martial stat, and you can see any trait that is relevant for leading an army. Then down here you see 684 for 3 years contract. That is quite quite the amount of money. But I hope that, you know, I don't know, I can't actually evaluate what the economy in CK3 looks like. I don't know if this is good, I don't know if this is bad. 2,400 doesn't sound that much, but who knows at the end of the day. Now, again, this interface and the way it works in CK2, horrible. In CK2, of course, we see all the unit types that they have, and, you know, we see what they cost on an instant basis. So this is what I would pay right now, and this is what I would pay on a monthly cost, but I wouldn't see any of the stats. I wouldn't see any relevance here to, for example, the personal combat skill, or, for example, the actual leadership ability of Captain Badre, or any other character here, for example. Let me try to find someone that actually has a skill. None of these have actual skills. Are you kidding me? It's super unlucky. Yeah, he is the flanker. We would never know that Captain Khalil of the Arab Company is a flanker unless I actually clicked on his portrait. So, with that being said, CK3 does away with that. They just show it to you in one window. You can immediately tell what is going on. Huge fan of the change. Not just of the fact that we just pay them one time and then they're ours for 3 years, but also the fact that this has been changed to a degree where we can now actually and actively tell what the hell is going on just by looking at this window without having to click through a million more windows. Once the 3 years are almost up, you'll receive an alert warning you that the mercenaries are about to pack up and get on their way. You'll then have the opportunity to pay them for another 3 years of service. This also means that they aren't going to betray you the second you go into debt, which I know will sadden a lot of you, but this new system makes it a lot easier to keep track of what you have and don't have during war. So mercenaries are an expensive way of doing warfare, but sometimes it's the only way you'll survive. However, in order to find a mercenary company that fits you in both size and shape, we have a new system for generating them to make sure there is always a wide range to choose from. This is amazing. And my god, this is a long dev diary video today, isn't it? Like almost 30 minutes. It's definitely going to be 30 minutes, I think. You can see right here the way they are generated. You can see what kind of units they have, how much they cost, how many people they have in total, and then you just open this window and like can click through them and see the stats of the commander as well. This is very good in, again, excellent UI work, and all of these are generated in a very, very, very good way. In CK2, you sometimes have the issue, some regions just don't have any mercenary bands. Some regions just are in a situation where you have nothing, or you have too much, or you only have the gigantic mercenaries, or you have only tiny mercenaries. This now changes. Each culture generates between 1 and 3 mercenary companies, depending on the number of counties of that culture, with each additional company being bigger and more expensive than the previous one, meaning it is tiered both in how many are available and how big they are. They will also pick a county of their culture to keep as their headquarters and will be available to be hired by anyone within a certain range of that county, meaning the range of where they are available is incredibly dynamic. With each culture generating mercenaries, their names and coats of arms are either picked from a generated list of names specific to their culture so that you can get historical or particularly flavorful companies in there. I am incredibly excited for this. The way mercenaries work is so much more fun. You don't constantly have to keep a look at, you know, these numbers, and if you're going to run out how many months you can sustain them, you just paid them and they will serve you, and there you go. You will also have a much easier time hiring the right mercenaries because, you know, Amayas, I could never tell that he doesn't have any skills that will aid me in winning this. But for example, in CK3, I would easily be able to tell that Khalil is a good commander and I should utilize his band simply because he's good at fighting and will make a sizable difference even far further than his troops or the amount of troops that he has ever could. This entire dev diary showcases an absolutely excellent level of skill when it comes to UI design. CK2, and I mentioned this in an earlier dev diary, I can't, you know, I sometimes go around and I watch Twitch streamers and I watch them, especially if they play CK2 for the very first time, and I watch them struggle because none of the windows and none of the design makes that much sense unless you've played the game since release. You know, today I can say I know exactly where to look for everything because I have played this game every day for so many years in the past, but a new player has a hard time. In CK3, cut all of that out. It will all be easily accessible, and that is a huge boon to get some more, you know, proper warfare, to get some more warfare with more customization, with more player interest, instead of just let's have the stacks collide. I am very, very excited for that. On top of everything else, mercenary companies come with 1 or more specific men-at-arms types, right? We took a look at that already. Alright, and that was really all that this was, and all that this dev diary was. You'll just have to wait until release to see. I'm not saying they're teasing a release date announcement, but I think they might be teasing a release date announcement. Maybe next week, and I pray that this is true. Usually at this point they say, next week we for you have warfare. In this one they say you'll just have to wait until release to see. Are you hyped? I don't know if this is true. It's pure speculation. Just came up with it in my head. I think next week is gonna have the release date announcement. Now, this was this video. Let me know what you think about war. Let me know what you think even about the Byzantine government system. I'm still very bummed out, and I completely understand that. I think that is an incredibly valid point to make. That sucks, but this dev diary and everything of its contents, I am absolutely a huge fan. Just a step up in every single regard. Now, with that being said, I want to thank the members of the channel, namely the Barons Aaron, Stefan, the Richest T, Snywolf, Emma, Mamela, Thomas, Lachlan, and Mitchell, and then, of course, also the Counts, Shifty, X on the Naughty, and Wombat, and last but not least, the Dukes, Suspicious Dark, Benedict, Nathan, Knight of Squires, Kenneth, Lexo, Roboman, My Dad, Left Me at Arby's, and Eric and Aiden. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Let me know in the comments what you think about everything going on here. Later, alligator.